Welcome to the City Club of Cleveland, America's citadel of free speech for 93 years. My name is Sanjeev Kapoor, and I am president of the City Club. In 1999, Professor Melvin Hawley published his book, The American Mayor, which ranked the best and worst big city mayors in American history. Interestingly enough, one Cleveland mayor, Tom Johnson, ranked as the second best mayor in the history of the United States, second only to New York Mayor Fiorella LaGuardia. Professor Hawley ascribed Mayor Johnson's success to his effectiveness in educating the public. As Professor Hawley noted, Mayor Johnson's ability to carry out a public dialogue with Cleveland citizens allowed him not merely to reflect public sentiment, but to convince and lead Cleveland citizens in areas that might otherwise be deemed risky ventures. We at the City Club hope that today's mayoral primary debate will assist you in judging who has that ability to educate and lead this great city. I present to you our moderator, ideastream's morning news anchor, Dan Moulthrop.
Candidates, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the City Club's forum for the mayoral primary. Our goal today is to have a fair, informative, and spirited discussion on issues concerning the city and in particular of concern to this audience. Here's how that will happen. To begin with, each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement. The order of those statements has been determined by draw just before lunch. After those opening statements, we'll go straight to questions from the audience. The City Club asks those questions be directed to a specific candidate, who then has 30 seconds to respond. I may then ask one or two other candidates for an additional 30-second response. We will, of course, strive to give every candidate equal time. As we get close to the end, I will ask one final question, and the candidates will then have 1 minute to respond. Our time is short today, and we remind you that time spent in excessive cheering for any one candidate will be deducted in his or her response time to the final question. Without further ado, let's get to the opening statements. Mr. Lynch.
Thank you very much, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, this mayor's race is more than just about an election. It's about the future of Northeast Ohio, about our region, and about the future of our children and our grandchildren. I believe that the single most important issue for the next mayor in the city of Cleveland is job creation. We have to fix our schools, and we have to provide a safer community. But if we don't have job creation, we don't have a tax base. If we don't have a tax base, we don't have the revenue to address all these other problems. What we need to do is bring jobs to the community through the following efforts. First of all, the mayor must be the de facto director of economic development. The mayor must spend 90% of his time working on job creation. Secondly, the public-private partnership, which was made famous by George Voinovich, merely meant having people in private enterprise bring their talents and resources to the fore so that we can use them along with government to solve our problems. We need to do that. And thirdly, we must be able to make government work for business so we can have job creation. And when I say government work for business, I mean not getting a permit being a scavenger hunt through City Hall. I mean merely having snow removal you can count on for your business and having police response time that is adequate so you can have a safe area for your business. But additionally, we have to fix the schools, change the culture of education. And by that I mean just making the education in Cleveland be one that we can be proud of again. We have 8th graders in the Cleveland City schools that are functionally illiterate. In the debates with Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, right here in Cleveland, looked right into the cameras and he asked this question. He asked the question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And I've been knocking on doors, and that answer has been a resounding no. I reject the proposition that the citizens of this community want to see a return to the mayoral leadership or the leadership that's come from the presidency of city council. I think they are desperate for a change so that they can have hope for the future once again. When I finished my 2 terms as mayor in the city of Euclid, the Plain Dealer ran an editorial, and that editorial read as follows. Lynch provided an efficient, bottom-line conscious, service-oriented operation. Lynch helped make Euclid a place more friendly for business, in which to bring jobs to the community, and a place in which to live. The United States Junior Chamber of Commerce has only one time designated a mayor as the best young mayor in America. My name is David Lynch. I was named America's best young mayor, and I ask you to consider all these matters when you go to the polls on October 4th. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Next, we'll hear from Mayor Campbell.
Thank you very much. Indeed, the future of Cleveland does rest with one of us here today, with all of us here today. And for several weeks, in various settings, we've presented our histories, our ideas, and our plans for Cleveland. I've had this job, the most challenging job I've ever loved, for nearly 4 years. And even in tough economic times, I've built a team that faced our problems squarely and is moving us into the future. Cleveland now has the basics: a finance department that can add and subtract, a law department that can write a contract and represent us in court, an airport run by a professional who could negotiate with Continental to secure the hub for 10 more years. We took a sluggish building and housing division, turned it into a department, and cut the time to get a permit at least in half. Even with diminished resources, we have maintained our basic city services. A lot of people talk about efficiencies in government. I, my friends, am living it here in the city of Cleveland. So what? The government is supposed to work. The fact that we made it work is perhaps not unremarkable. But let me tell you how this enables us to move into the future. Together, we won the fight for DFAS to stay here and grow and expand. That gives us the opportunity to expand that opportunity and even build more. We created an award-winning lakefront plan, and that gave us the opportunity to lobby successfully for resources that allows us to reclaim the lakefront for housing, for all kind of new investments on our lakefront. We can build Battery Park, new neighborhood in the east bank of the Flats, a Croc Center at Gordon Park, and the lakefront boulevard you could actually cross. We built 4,000 new homes. We put crime-fighting computers in every police car. We invested in job training and placement for returning felons, and so that people can live in Cleveland safely. We earned the distinction as an international digital city, giving visibility and recognition to the growing technology sector that provides energy for our medical community, for our financial services community, for advanced manufacturing, and we are training our people to succeed in these areas. Yes, my friends, we have challenges ahead. Even though our children's test scores are going up consistently in reading, the most fundamental skill needed to learn, even though our graduation rate increased nearly 14 points, we still need to build schools that are strong enough for the future. My friends, our work has only just begun. This is a strong team. We are moving, and this is not the time to interrupt that progress. I ask for your help. I ask for your support. I ask you to give us the opportunity to continue to revitalize Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Campbell. And now, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Cleveland is in a sea of poverty, adrift with no captain. But I see Cleveland as a great city again. But first, we must critically analyze its condition. No excuses and no rationalizing. As an attorney and president of the 100 Black men of Greater Cleveland, I've had the advantage of actually committing time, talent, and resources to problem solving. I have a broader range of public service than all of my opponents. A graduate of Glenville High School, former Cleveland school teacher, 8-year member of the Board of Trustees of Central State University, 13 years on the Board of Trustees of the Regional Sewer District, and Cuyahoga County Grand Jury Foreman. I have a history of community and public service equal to or exceeding that of all of my opponents. But let's let the debate begin. Let's talk about the denial of a quality education, unemployment, race, police brutality, the fact that the city's black population, which is 56%, is limited to 20% of the jobs created by public sector employment. Let's debate Cleveland's new status as a majority-minority city. Let's talk about a city policy that has resulted in over 11,000 of the 40,000 people in prison coming from Cleveland. My opponents represent the status quo, banjo hitters, and that will not do. They've been silent on critical issues, silent on the 27 police shootings of Cleveland citizens, silent on the issue of government corruption, silent on waste in the school construction project, silent on the HIV/AIDS epidemic among African American women in Cleveland, silent on Cleveland's alarming rate of infant immortality. I've spoken out on each of these issues. My opponents' silence is proof that they're out of touch. Many of my opponents have even fought against jobs of people in Cleveland, and all of them supported mortgaging our children's future in favor of sports complexes and economic mirages. But now is the time for a new brand of leadership, bold, brash, unintimidated. I will create schools of excellence, promote our new ethnicity, and create a cultural mecca. I will utilize the Port Authority to put our people to work and will make our neighborhoods safe and clean. But in spite of all of Cleveland's problems, we're one of the most desirable locations in the country. We're within 500 miles of the majority of the country's population. We are the center of foreign financial credit markets. We have a huge fresh water supply on our front door in Lake Erie. We maintain our own electric utility and are home to two of the finest hospitals in the world. We have a diverse industrial base of small, medium, and large companies. But this campaign is not about union endorsements or newspaper editorial opinions. It's about you, the people. So let's go to work, people. And as the only true Clevelander on this stage, born on 37th and Scoville, I'm uniquely qualified to lead this community. I'm qualified to be the mayor of the city of Cleveland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. And now, Mr. Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's truly my pleasure to be here today. Is my mic working? Can you hear me? I am a senior internal auditor, former, who audited the $1.3 billion budget for the city of Cleveland. I wrote all the policies and procedures that the city of Cleveland is under now for the finance department and other departments. And the things we have wrong in Cleveland are the school system. No books for our children. You just saw on TV where books are being thrown away and there's an ongoing investigation by the police department. Nobody throws away quality books. They find other buyers to buy those books. And we cannot let this wastage continue in Cleveland. $750,000 of state matching fund money was sent back to the state because of mismanagement by our Cleveland School Board, school administrator, and our mayor was supposed to be overseeing that, so that's lost money. We also had a Mall C parking lot that was generating over $400,000 in revenue every year, which was disbanded and turned into a non-revenue earning park bench area. And then after that, we had 1,200 city employees laid off, which didn't need to be laid off because I wrote recommendations to the mayor to cut overtime in the police force, the EMS, and also the fire department, which was not done. So what happened was we ended up laying off police officers, subjecting ourselves and our children and our families to be violently abused in the city, because who can feel safe in a city with an inadequate police force? A mayor in charge of a city never lays off police officers. That is the main safety mechanism of the police force in Cleveland. When we had that, now we've had more juvenile killings, we've had more violence in the schools, we had more killings in Frank Jackson's ward, at Lonnie Burton Recreation Center, which weren't addressed properly by the mayor or the city council president. And they only come out on Kinsman on Labor Day when it's time to wave and say, look what I've done. But if you look at Kinsman, you don't see any development. Look at Buckeye, look at Woodland, look at Central, look at all over the city. You don't see any new development. You see condemned houses, contaminated buildings, and you see blight in Cleveland. We need to revise Cleveland and regenerate Cleveland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. And now, Mr. Draper.
People ask me why I'm running for mayor. To me, the answer is simple. I've given over 40 years of my life to this community through faithful service. I love this city, and I want my children and their children to share in that love affair. But as my public career comes to a close, I'm concerned that the community I've worked so hard to protect and defend is failing. And ladies and gentlemen, we're all to blame. You see, the perceived frontrunners in this race are people that we put into positions of responsibility. I myself have worked for one, the current mayor, and I consider the other, the city council president, to be a friend. But under their leadership, we've fallen to the depths of poverty and the doldrums of economic stagnation. I've listened as they've placed the blame on the backs of bureaucrats in Columbus and in Washington. And I've heard the silent scream of the thousands who have left our city because they see no future. I'm running for mayor because this must come to an end. I will no longer stand idly by as the people at City Hall squander what's left of this once great city. Our streets are not safe. Our schools have lost the community's trust, and jobs remain hard to find. We've stumbled down a path of failure that has led to the edge of a cliff of demise upon which we currently stand. I'm running for mayor because I believe that my well-rounded background in the public sector, as a police officer, as an attorney, as chief public defender, as safety director, all give me an understanding of this city better than anyone else on this dais. My proven experience administering large agencies demonstrate that I'm prepared for the job. And finally, my history of successfully fixing broken organizations and negotiating agreements that satisfy both labor and management shows that I can change failing situations. 4 years ago, two people took over the reins of this city. 4 years ago, our population hovered at 500,000, but today it's below 470,000. 4 years ago, our schools were turning the corner, but today they reverted to academic emergency. And 4 years ago, our streets were among the safest in the country, but today the murder rate has exploded and the car theft rate is the highest in the state. 4 years ago, our city was better off than it is today. The time for change is now. The old days of business as usual at City Hall must come to an end. I'm ready for that challenge, but to do so, I'll need your help. I hope you'll take the first step on Tuesday, October 4th, and honor me and this city's future by voting for James A. Draper as mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Draper. And now we turn our attention to Bill Patmon.
Thank you. It is indeed my pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. But I find myself doing something I don't often do, and that's referencing the Plain Dealer. On Sunday, they wrote an editorial that said that Bill Patmon knows more about City Hall than anyone else in the race. No, they did not endorse me, but they went on to say that I should get a job with whoever wins the mayor's race. Well, I'm here today to get a job. I'm Bill Patmon, and I'm running for mayor of the city of Cleveland because I do know more than anyone else in the race. Let me talk to you briefly about three cities that I worked very hard with in. The first is a city that built rock and roll halls of fame, stadiums, arenas, public-private partnerships, malls and neighborhoods across Cleveland, started the housing boom, a city that was called the All-American City, a city that we were all proud of. But let's talk a little bit about the city that is right now, a city that schools in academic emergency, 2003, poorest city in the country, more than 100,000 people in poverty, the city that can be. We can have a city that educates its children. We can have a city that creates jobs for not just PhDs, but for people with GEDs, the 100,000 or so people who are in poverty in this city. And if we work hard together, we can get them out together. We must recreate the public-private partnership. We must also have a city hall that works with its partners, the county, the port, the banks, the private industry, and the schools. together we can have an all-American city again. One thing missing from the equation. In the 90s, we had leadership. I know more, I care as much, and I have the qualifications to lead this city, to lead it back to prominence. I want you to do what Sharon Patmon is going to do on October 4th. I want you to vote for Bill Patmon. So on October 4th, I personally ask for your vote, your commitment to become the next mayor of Cleveland and to lead us back to being the comeback city and the all-American city of this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patmon. Now, Mr. Triozzi.
Thank you. I'm in this race because of the failed leadership of these past 4 years. We are not living up to our potential, and there is a desire across this town for new and vigorous leadership. Here's what leadership means to me. Leadership is to have vision, to see the big picture and what we need to affect long-term economic growth in our community. Leadership is to be creative and innovative. Leadership means to listen, to act upon the concerns of all our citizens. Leadership is to have passion and believe in our strengths, our neighborhoods, our businesses, and most of all, our children. Leadership is being decisive, to size up an issue, weigh all the competing considerations, decide, and move on. And more than anything, rather than just talking about our problems, real leadership is rolling up your sleeves and doing something about them. I intend to bring this kind of leadership to the city of Cleveland. We need leadership in our neighborhoods to eliminate board-ups, to vigorously enforce the housing code, and to spur economic activity in our neighborhood business districts. We need leadership in our economy to prepare our workforce for the jobs of the 21st century, to encourage entrepreneurship and small businesses, to support the arts as an economic engine, and to expand our presence as an international city. We must be open to regional economic thinking to take advantage of the groundbreaking opportunities being developed in our local colleges and universities. We need leadership in our schools to think creatively and reinvent high school education using work-study models that connect our students to the economic opportunities that await them. We must create a cabinet-level Office of Youth Opportunity to comprehensively deal with the issue of disruption and youth violence. We must be open and transparent with the workings of the school administration to restore the confidence of the people of Cleveland. And we need leadership at City Hall itself to establish the Office of Inspector General to ensure honesty and integrity in government, and to use technology to the fullest so that the City Hall becomes a model of accessibility and accountability. This is not the leadership we've seen these past 4 years. We deserve so much more than we've been getting. I reject the notion that the inertia of the past 4 years was unavoidable. I reject the notion that we should be content to just limp along. And I reject the notion that substance and energy and vision do not matter. This town has accepted mediocre leadership for far too long. Raise the bar, embrace change, stand up for Cleveland, and stand up for me on October 4th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Triozzi. Now, Mr. Frank Jackson.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say to everyone, I don't have a hidden agenda. I do not have a hidden agenda. You know, I didn't move into the city of Cleveland just to run for mayor. And neither do I live in an area of the city of Cleveland where I can just step across the street and be in a more affluent community. And I always tell people that just because I'm the council president and have a law degree and I'm a lawyer, it doesn't mean that the things that impact Cleveland doesn't impact me or my family. I have people in my family who are in prison, addicted to drugs, alcohol, unemployed, homeless, teenage, you name it. What happens to Cleveland happens to me. So it's important, it's very important to me that we have a city that works, one that functions, a city where we can educate our children so they can have hope and opportunity for the future, a city where we can do economic development and create jobs so our people can take care of their family and stability in our community,
a place where we can enter into partnership with the region to create a regional partnership that can compete on a national and international basis. A city hall that can facilitate economic development, also provide quality of life through city service at a reduced cost, and to have our streets safe, where the people of the city of Cleveland can walk in the streets and be safe, and our children aren't gunned down in the street. And when we do this, we look at these things, and they're just tools. Tools for what purpose? To be used to make Cleveland great again, to make the lives of people who live, work, and play in Cleveland have a better life. And when we do that, and when we look at these things, we have to measure whether or not we've been successful in the use of these tools by looking at whether or not the least of us are better off as a result of what we've done. And I'm not talking about charity or welfare. I'm not talking about that. And I'm not talking about east side or west side. I'm not talking about downtown or neighborhood. Not talking about black or white or haves or have-not. I'm talking about one city, one people, who can share in the prosperity, in the hope of a future, that we can work as a city, as a people, to make this city great again and make it a place where people want to live, a city of choice, where businesses and people will choose to be here, neighborhoods of choice, where people will choose and businesses will choose to be here. That is why I'm running for mayor. I have no hidden agenda, and it's what you heard is what it really is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Ladies and gentlemen, please prepare your questions, but first, City Club President Sanjeev Kapoor.
Today, at the City Club, we are listening to a debate between the candidates for mayor of Cleveland. We will return to moderator Dan Moulthrop in a few moments for questions, but first, a few announcements. We welcome you to this City Club Forum, the longest continuously running free speech forum in the country. Our greetings go to those present in this room and to those listening on WCPN and watching on WVIZ and Adelphia. Information about the City Club is available at our website, www.cityclub.org. Tapes of this and other programs are available through the website or by calling the City Club. The website also has a list of our many excellent upcoming programs, as do the flyers on your tables. This is the annual forum on local politics in memory of longtime member Peter De Leon. Peter's daughter, Paulette Novak, is with us today. Paulette, we remember Peter with much fondness. Now we would like to return to ideastream's Dan Moulthrop and our candidates for the question and answer portion of our debate. We welcome questions from everyone, including guests, but please make sure that you are asking a question and make it brief. Dan?
Thank you very much, Sanjeev. Again, we will be taking audience questions in just a moment. I remind you to please direct your questions to a specific candidate. They'll have 30 seconds to respond, and then I may or may not direct that question to one or two other people. So, do we have a question to begin with? Yes.
Good afternoon. This question is directed to Mayor Campbell. Mayor Campbell, I teach school. The parents of my children, many of them do not have jobs, or are they considered the working poor? And in your commercials, you talk about bringing in 1,800 jobs from Walmart. How can you justify bringing in 1,800 low-paying jobs from Walmart, where my parents would still not be able to support their families, and at the same time, those 1,800 jobs will destroy 3,000 union jobs where people can get health care? One seems to cancel out the other. So how can you justify bringing in 1,800 Walmart jobs and at the same time causing other people to lose their decent jobs?
Okay, I got 30 seconds to answer. Merle, every problem that there is with Walmart is already here in Cleveland. Clevelanders are shopping at Walmart. They're shopping in North Olmsted, in Garfield Heights, in Cleveland Heights. The only thing we don't have from Walmart is jobs and tax base. What is at stake with Steelyard Commons is 1,800 jobs, not all at Walmart. Walmart is one of the stores that's going to be there. The developer came to me and said, I'm prepared to spend $90 million of my own money without city subsidy and create 1,800 jobs, and to that I said yes.
Okay. Mr. Draper, you've received some union endorsement, and this is the Walmart coming to town is a big union issue. I wonder if you could respond as well.
Seems to me that the mayor's answer is we have poverty, so it's okay to bring in more poverty. That rationale just doesn't fly. I have talked to businesses who are in danger. We're talking about several of the grocery stores who've invested in our community, worked in our community, created jobs in our community. Some of these jobs are tremendous health care, and they're in an endangered species because of the big box.
Thank you very much, Mr. Draper. Mr. Lynch, I wonder if you could respond as well.
Well, I think part of the problem we have in job creation is just we're not welcoming people to come into the city to bring those jobs. You know, we've got a red light camera program which posts the cameras at entrances to the cities like sentries as you come in, taking your picture. How about this? Part of my program is I'm going to get rid of every parking meter in Cleveland so that finally people, that's all right, it should deserve a round of applause. Look, I'm a private practicing attorney, and so many lawyers have fled the city just because people don't have a place to park. Let's stop doing the dumb things that deter people from coming to the city and welcome them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Our next question.
This question is for Mr. Lynch. From your unique perspective as a past mayor of a neighbor of the city of Cleveland, would you like to talk to us a little bit about regionalism?
Thank you. Regionalism, to some, means sharing of services between communities. But I think regionalism should be a broader concept, and that really means having the outlying areas of this community share in solving our problems together. You know, there are $1 million homes going up in Medina, and yet we have people struggling with duct tape over the windows in the inner city. I want to see some of the wealth shared with the city of Cleveland. And I was a law director in Westlake as well as the mayor out in Euclid. And I've seen that people in outlying areas want to solve our problems. In Bay Village, they're concerned about the schools in Cleveland. So I think regionalism means pulling together all of our resources to solve these problems.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Jackson, I wonder if you could respond as well.
Regionalism is, for me, is not regional government, but it is how do we create an economic unit, a regional economic unit, so we can compete nationally and internationally? How can we bring the assets of Cleveland to bear in such a way that we can help the region prosper, at the same time ensuring that Cleveland prospers? But it's interesting that Mr. Lynch talks about sharing. I think if sharing were the real issue here, then many of our questions and our concerns about regionalism would go away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Triozzi, I wonder if you could respond too, please.
Yeah, we have problems in our community that know no political boundaries. We have opportunities that know no political boundaries. You know, given the opportunities and the innovation that come out of our university community, there's wonderful opportunity to expand into regional economic opportunities. We need to be at the cutting edge of new technologies, new innovation, so that this entire region will benefit from those ideas and the impact that they will have on a community. It's all about setting an environment for success, and that's what the opportunity that regional economic thinking brings you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Triozzi. Our next question.
My question is for Mr. Draper. As a former policeman and safety director, this community was recently shocked when the policeman trying to arrest a 15-year-old suspect wound up shooting him 10 times. And we learned that the civilian review board that we thought was in place has not functioned for several years. What would you do about the civilian review board in order to build confidence in the community when these incidents occur?
Well, what I did do when I worked under Mayor Campbell was to make sure that our civilian review board was represented on the shooting team. They rolled out on every incident where there was an ultimate force or ultimate sanction was imposed, and that's death. I think we have to continue to dialogue. We have to continue to partner with the FBI and other agencies that can help us look as if we're being objective, and we have to get information out to the public, information that we can get out to the public that won't jeopardize the investigation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Draper. Mr. Brown, I wonder if you could respond. What would you do with the civilian review board?
Well, we would have to have an unbiased civilian review board, and they would have to take a look at the facts. They would have to look at witnesses, who saw the shooting, and was it justified or unjustified. And in order to find out whether it was unjustified or justified, you would have to wonder, were they threatened by the 15-year-old? And did they use excessive force, or was a lesser amount of force necessary? And that's what they would have to figure out.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Patmon.
Civilian Review Board. I'd restart it, change the policy, but as a mayor of the city of Cleveland, in order to engender confidence in the constituency, we would do one of two things. We either fire police officers that shoot people 10 times, or we would have them thoroughly investigated and vetted to make sure that we don't have that kind of action in the city of Cleveland. 27 shootings, youth, 15-year-old being shot 10 times, a bit too much for me, and I'd be the Civilian Review Board in this particular case.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patmon. Our next question from the audience.
Council President Frank Jackson, in many of the polls you seem to be the front runner. You've talked about a vision of leadership and how you're going to approach the city of Cleveland, a partnership. Who specifically in labor have you approached personally to sit down with and share your vision of partnership? Because it's going to take partnership between the administration and labor to lead this city.
Well, I think over the last few years, I've had many discussions with you as a labor leader for. I've also met with Mr. Beck, head of the police union. I've met with John Ryan, AFL-CIO. I've met with Lori Soggs to talk about how the building trades can get more involved with hiring cleaners. I met with, you name them, I've met with them. So a meeting and having conversation is not the real issue, is how we can work together to make Cleveland a better place.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Nelson.
I'm going to answer 3 questions since I have the opportunity to do them. First, on the Walmart issue, there will be $32 million in annual wages. We can't afford to lose a project like that. As to the Civilian Review Board, I would appoint a review board with 2 police officers, 1 law professor, and 2 citizens and give them subpoena power. As to the shooting issue, our police officers need more training. They're only getting 1 training session a year now, and they need to go back to 4 training sessions. As to the union, I've worked with union leaders on the Steel Yard Commons project. In fact, Lori Soggs will be part of a program tomorrow where this $90 million project will be announced, I believe, on Thursday. So we're talking with union leaders now about various projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. Mayor Campbell.
Trying to figure out which question.
We're talking about working with unions, partnering with unions.
We have had very strong partnerships with our unions, and it's been as we've dealt with the building of the Cleveland schools, as we dealt with the negotiations that brought us to the Cleveland residency law. There were specific and long-time engaged conversations with the unions. Matter of fact, when we were facing the challenge with the Euclid Avenue corridor, and the federal government wouldn't let us put the Fannie Lewis law into the actual contract, I called the union folks and I said, will you just act as if it's there and make sure that it works? And they said yes. They've been great partners with us.
Thank you very much. Our next question.
Mr. Lynch, can you tell us your ideas for improving the schools?
Sure. When I talked about changing the culture of education, many of you, I'm sure, have heard my radio ads. And basically, what I want to do is get back to some of the basics to instill confidence in our schools again. I want to put uniforms on every single student in the Cleveland City School District. The federal government is now allowing public schools to have all-boy and all-girl schools. These things work in the private sector. In addition to that, the next time there's a levy, I want the money from that levy to follow the child. Imagine how many of those people that have their kids in private schools will vote for a levy when they know that the portion that's attributable to their family follows their child. And those are just some of the things we can do to reinstill confidence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Nelson, I believe you were a public school teacher. I wonder if you could respond.
You know, I understand Mr. Lynch's missionary zeal, but the real way to address the issues in Cleveland Public School is to first of all insist that our children come to school dressed as students, and our teachers come to school dressed as in the business of teaching. That does not require uniforms, just decency. Secondly, parent involvement is key. How do you get parents involved? You have the young people engaged in activities, so the parents will come to the school to observe the activities. Finally, safety. One of my opponents, Jim Draper, was an outstanding police officer. In fact, I'd love to see him doing that job again. But the fact of the matter, the fact of the matter was, when I was at Glenville High School, Jim Draper was one of a trio of policemen that we had relationships with, not when we were in trouble, but just as part of the daily fabric. And I like to see that kind of relationship between the police and the school system.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Mr. Triozzi, could you respond to how would you improve the city schools?
Well, I think you could begin by creating high schools based on innovative, creative models like work study, like we saw at Martin DePore. I think you need to recognize that the issues of student disruption do not start in our schools. They start in the home and work their way through the neighborhoods. And to, this idea that I promote as creating a department or office of youth opportunity to focus an entire community around these issues is absolutely essential to ensure that children are ready, willing, able, and eager to learn. You have to also focus in on the accountability issue, on how you make the administration transparent to restore the confidence of the people of the city of Cleveland.
Thank you, Mr. Triozzi. Our next question.
Hi, I'd like to direct my question to Mr. Patmon, please. From a moral standpoint, often communities are judged or assessed by how they care for the most vulnerable citizens among them. And given that in 1 year we both earned our poverty status and criminalized panhandling, what steps might you take to ensure that the voices of those constituents who are homeless or at risk of homelessness are heard and addressed? Thank you.
I'm glad you asked that question. The first thing the mayor of this city has to do is deal with the 100,000 or so people who are in poverty. And how do you do that? You create some low-tech jobs that pay a living wage. You create some opportunities for people who don't. Because people are going to do one of three things. They're going to work, they're going to steal, or they're going to beg. And we have too many people stealing and begging. And we change that by changing our focus on what we do as a government. We focus on creating low-tech industrial jobs in this region so that those people have a way out. Because they're locked in as we speak. And you see them on public square, you see them at the bus stops, and we have to change that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patmon. Mr. Brown, how would you address the problem of poverty?
Poverty is a big issue in the city of Cleveland, which stems from layoffs and lack of job opportunities. And this is because we have a school system where people are making a mass exodus out of Cleveland, and the population has gone down from 1 million to 400,000 people. We have to attract businesses based on our school system. We need to improve upon our school system to attract new families to Cleveland and attract new businesses to Cleveland. And we also have to take care of our homeless people because our shelters are overrun right now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mayor Campbell.
Actually, we have been working extremely in a coordinated way on both a plan to end homelessness by 2010 and a focus on poverty. Obviously, the most important thing to get out of poverty is to have a job, to be trained to do the job, and to be able to be successful in moving forward with that job. And that's why our whole focus has been on job creation, job retention. At the same time, having stable housing is a very important component of that. That's why 40% of the new housing has been in the affordable category, and why we've been working so hard on educating our children, and so that they do have the basic skills and are able to move forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mayor Campbell. Our next question.
My question is for anybody other than the present administration, because the mayor has already answered it in the papers. But of course we know that, yes, poverty is a crime, and a lot of times people commit crimes to get out of poverty. But what will the new administration try to do to compete with the administration that is in place now to put empowerment zone monies into the hands of the people or the residents of the empowerment zone that has an idea not to get a job for IBM, but to found a business that will compete with IBM and put people in the community to work? How would you put the money into the empowerment zone people's hands?
Thank you very much for your question. Mr. Jackson, I wonder if you can respond.
Well, I think he used the right word. If you're talking about getting rid of poverty, you have to empower people, both politically and economically. And that's why I say that the things about education, job creation, quality of life, all these kinds of things that we need to do are just tools. They are tools for us to use as public officials tools to use as a mayor for that purpose. And I do believe that measuring whether or not we are successful at what we do is looking at the bottom line as to whether or not the least of us are better off, because the rest of us are going to do well anyway. So we have to look at the least of it to see if we've improved the overall operation of what we do.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Triozzi.
This is an area that ideas like like youth opportunity really come into focus, where you begin connecting people to the economic opportunities that lie ahead of them through mentorship, through summer jobs programs, through workforce development. It's that point of connection that we need to expand upon and focus, not just in one neighborhood, but across this town, that everybody from our faith community, business community, civic community are all focused on the same plan in order to address that issue.
Thank you very much, Mr. Triozzi. And I'm going to direct it to Mr. Draper, but I assure you you'll have a chance to answer a future question, Mr. Brown. Mr. Draper.
I think we pretty much agree that education, health, and shelter. We talk about affordable housing. That's an oxymoron, particularly when you build your housing middle class and up, and you see no SROs or single room occupancy. I think we have to admit that we have a problem. We have 3,000 homeless on any given night in this town. We have shelters for only 1,000. Before we can start talking about businesses for homeless and that kind of thing, we have to take care of business and start with the basics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Draper. Our next question.
I've heard a lot of things about what's wrong with the city of Cleveland today. I'd like to hear from the candidates about what they would do on their first day in office that are going to make the changes.
Thank you very much for your question. Mr. Brown.
Yes, what I would do is make sure I hire a competent CEO and president of the school board, because our children's lives are at stake and their future also. They've had a terrible 4 years, they haven't had books to take home, and they need a proper education. You keep hearing these statistics about they've done better graduation, but that's not what I'm seeing out in the city. I'm seeing them out on street corners, I'm seeing the curfew law not enforced, and I'm seeing the truancy law not enforced. And also our newspaper, Plain Dealer, I would bring a new newspaper in town, because somebody needs to enforce the facts accurately, because they're not reporting accurately.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Lynch, your first day in office.
First thing I'd do, I'd revive Doug Clifton, who's sitting over there, who just passed out. But after that, I really believe what this city needs is an FDR moment. We had a question about regionalism. The leader of Cleveland is really the leader of the region of Northeast Ohio. And I want it to be the mission statement of every employee of the city, of every resident of the city, of every resident of Northeast Ohio, to join together in a moment like we did in World War II to bring this city back, that it's your mission in everything you do to bring jobs back to this community. If you don't think that if we took the Ford plant in Brook Park and put it at 79th and St. Clair, we wouldn't change that area, my gosh, we would. And let's all pull together and do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Mr. Nelson.
First thing I do is something we can accomplish by executive order. I would take a page out of Maynard Jackson's book and pass an executive order to modify the Fannie Lewis law from 20% upward to 50% of city residents on all publicly funded projects.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. Our next question.
My question is for Mr. Jackson. You tabled Councilman Zone's anti-smoking legislation, and we have countries like Ireland and Italy, states like California, cities like New York, Boston, and even our own Columbus passing anti-smoking legislation. When does the health of the city residents become a priority for you?
Well, first of all, I didn't table legislation. We didn't even introduce it. We didn't allow it to be introduced. The reason for that was that there's a strong contingency on both sides of that issue, and we need a very thorough debate. We just can't do things just because someone wants us to do it. We have to think these things out and get all sides of what people are talking about so that we can reach a conclusion what's in the best interest of Cleveland. Plus, again, there were tremendous political contention within City Council as to whether or not to even introduce it, so we didn't.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Patmon, what about anti-smoking legislation?
Secondhand smoke causes cancer. Secondhand smoke causes cancer. And I, for one, would be sure that none of you suffered from cancer from someone else smoking without it being your choice. It's something that's time has come in Cleveland. We should have done it long ago, and we lag behind in many other areas, including that one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patmon. And Mayor Campbell.
As a matter of fact, the legislation was drafted after a very long debate. We had a commission that had people on multiple sides of this issue negotiate for about almost a year, and it was based on that there was clarity that, in fact, the risk to the health of Clevelanders is so high that, especially, we got to understand there's been a lot of conversation about our low-income residents and folks who are in service jobs, especially people who are working in bars and restaurants who every day have to go there, and their health can be very seriously impacted. That's why we wanted the legislation introduced.
Thank you, Mayor Campbell. We're going to go now to the final question, and the candidates will respond in the order reverse of how they opened. And the final question has been determined by the City Club. And the question is this. There's a number of different kind of mayors a city can have. There's the visionary, the charismatic leader, the autocrat, the administrator, the numbers person, the team builder. I could go on here, but what kind of a mayor does Cleveland need? And why is that you? We're going to start with Mr. Jackson.
Cleveland needs a mayor who first understands the city, who just doesn't have a political ambition, but really is concerned about the well-being of the city, its future, and its people. It also needs to have a mayor who is so involved in the everyday operation of the city that if a stick of furniture is out of place, that mayor knows about it. So that means that mayor has to be attentive to the needs of the city. You need a mayor who has leadership qualities, one that has a vision as to where the city needs to go, one who can work with others, bring in others that take advice to develop a strategic plan as to how to accomplish that vision, and one who listens to the needs of people. Thousands of people throughout this city are looking for opportunity to lend their expertise, their talents, and resources to helping this city be great again, and we can't turn them away.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Triozzi.
We need inspiration and we need action. And the last question is a good example of how we've lacked inspiration and action. We have an issue here that clearly resonates with the leadership in terms of its health costs, yet this issue remains buried, no action. It's been called on for public debate. There's no debate. There's no movement. There's no ability to move people forward and to do something that's right by the people of the city of Cleveland. You need somebody that can inspire people, somebody that is able to frame the issues and move people forward and get the job done. That's what real leadership is about. I identified in my opening statement what I feel the qualities of leadership are, and clearly the vision and being able to listen, but most importantly is the ability to roll up your sleeves and get the job done.
Thank you, Mr. Triozzi. Mr. Patmon.
I'll go back to the plain dealer. The kind of mayor the city needs is the kind of mayor that knows more than anybody else in this room about Cleveland City Hall. Being a visionary, yes. Empowering people to do the jobs, yes. Moving is something you can't do unless you understand the animal. I submit my resume as somebody who understands the animal better than anybody else on this stage and anybody else in this room. I spent a professional lifetime studying it. I intend to lead this city and intend to be the visionary and the person who gets us out of the malaise that we're in now, and secondhand smoking, you won't have to worry about it with Bill Patmon as a mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patmon. Mr. Draper.
Your list of characteristics was not an exclusive list. There's not one single characteristic. There's a number. Sometimes we need a steward to keep things safe. Sometimes we need a trailblazer to look ahead to the future. We need somebody who can be a consensus builder, somebody who's tolerant, somebody who's patient, somebody who can reach out and bring together all of the stakeholders. We talk about regionalism. My goodness, we have a lot of dialogue to go. We need to talk about what we mean by regionalism with education and with safety, because those are the two stoppers when you talk about regionalism. And we need somebody who can look at the view and accept the view of others.
Thank you very much, Mr. Draper. Mr. Brown.
Well, I started this race in early 2004. I've been running for mayor for over a year. The other candidates up here jumped in at the last minute. And I'll tell you one thing, a politician will do anything to stay in office no matter what the cost. We need somebody who's not interested in high position and the perks and what comes with the job, but somebody who has a sensitivity to the needs of the people in the community. Someone who can feel the pulse of the people of the community, who cares about their children, their families, their jobs, their quality of life. And we need that kind of person who can lead the city. I'm a numbers person, and we need somebody who's a micromanager. I would never let a budget go to the state where the educational system loses $750 million. So we need somebody who makes things happen, somebody who makes their workers accountable, and someone who can lead the city with a vision and know that that power is not their own power, but it's the power of the people, and not be subjective but objective and work for the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. Mr. Nelson.
You know, Cleveland needs a mayor that's willing to make hard decisions. This past summer was probably one of the toughest summers in terms of youth violence that we've ever experienced. And Cleveland was on the verge of an explosion, but for cooler minds and people working in the neighborhoods. I don't want to see us go through this kind of summer again. We need a mayor who's going to create job opportunities, that's going to provide a mentoring initiative across the board to young people, a mayor that will sit down with each of the special interests in this town and say that you're not going to make decisions that are going to harm us, that will mortgage our future by giving away all the resources that our children need. We need a mayor who can reach out beyond our borders, to touch companies and individuals in other communities around our country who can come to Cleveland and provide us some of the energy. Went to Atlanta a couple of weeks ago, energy in that community. Chicago, energy in that community. Cleveland, we need that kind of energy, and we need a mayor, and Michael Nelson's the mayor that can bring it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nelson. Mayor Campbell.
I think at the end of the day, we need a mayor who's effective in getting things done. And that's why I present myself for re-election. A lot of people can make pronouncements about what they would do, what should be done, what's wrong. Let's talk about, we set our sights on the lakefront. We spent 2 years planning. We've now raised and spent $100 million developing, and we have $300 million more committed. We set our sights on being a technology place, and we earned the International Digital City investment. That means that we are one of 3 in the world that is able to really highlight our technology opportunities. We set our sights on saving DFAS. We didn't only just save them, we got the opportunity to expand. It was a regional effort. It was the whole public-private partnership uniting and winning. We're setting our sights on education, and we've earned 2 blue ribbon schools. We've increased our graduation rate. We've increased our literacy rate. We have a lot more work to do, and we've set our sights on John Hay School of Science and Medicine and moving forward in this community. We have shown success. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Campbell. And now, Mr. Lynch.
Ladies and gentlemen, the citizens of this community are so hungry and starving for change. You can hear the hue and cry. Will somebody please do something? So the quality of the next mayor must be that we have a mayor who is a man of action. When I was in Euclid, within the first 6 months, we privatized the trash collection system, turned the city into a self-insured entity, and started a job creation program that led to the largest job creation activity in Euclid's history post-World War II. Now, I have great respect for the plain deal. I don't feel as Anthony Brown feels, but I will tell you this much. The endorsement I saw on Sunday said, well, The mayor's been kind of lousy, but maybe she'll get better. Ladies and gentlemen, we can't afford to wait. On East Boulevard, there's a lady who told me she doesn't get mail because the post office thinks the neighborhood is too unsafe to deliver. For God's sake, Clevelanders, look for change. It's sitting at this table. On October 4th, look for David Lynch to provide it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. And now, City Club President Sanjeev Kapoor.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland, we have been listening to a debate between candidates for Mayor of Cleveland. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A special thank you to ideastream for their radio and television production, and to our moderator, ideastream's Dan Moulthrop. This forum is now adjourned.